won't be using my real name for privacy reasons, but I will say that I am a 15-year-old female. I'm from Nebraska. I know you are probably thinking cornfields, middle of nowhere, but that's not where I'm from. I live in Omaha, but I have always loved the outdoors. I go hunting and or hiking almost every weekend with my dad or with my friends. Okay, so on to the story. This story is 100% true. I went to Nebraska National Forest every long weekend with two of my friends, who I'll call Haley and Todd. I have known them for years, and we would never hike alone because of the risks. So we became a group. Anyways, it was spring break last year when we went on a week-long backpacking trip. It was a 7-hour drive there. I, being 14, couldn't drive, but Haley was 16 and Todd was 15. Haley drove us there, and we had a great time for the first few hours of the drive. But when we got closer to the forest, something felt off. I know it sounds cliche, but I had this feeling like I was going to get sick. I ignored it and thought I was just nervous. So Haley and Todd, I guess, noticed that I was off. They asked me what was up, and when I told them something wasn't right, they laughed, thinking I was trying to scare them. A few hours later, and the feeling was still there, but we were at the trailhead. I got out, and everything was as it should be. We grabbed our packs, and off we went. I felt like I was at home in the trees, and the feeling was soon forgotten. We walked a little over 5 miles that day before we set up camp. We had a 2-person tent that Haley and I had brought, and then a hammock Todd had brought. After we set up camp, ate, and were just chilling by the fire talking, Todd began complaining about how he didn't want to sleep in his hammock. I didn't want to listen to him complaining and offered to switch places. He gladly accepted. So the night went on like usual until around 2 a.m. when we got tired and went to bed. Well, everyone but me. I have extremely bad insomnia, so I was just mending to the fire and chilling. Finally, I decided to get into the hammock and read. So I put out the fire, grabbed my headlamp, and got into the hammock. I noticed that something was off, but I couldn't place what it was. That's when it hit me. It was completely silent in the woods. No crickets, no animals, nothing. My skin started to crawl. Something was off. I turned out my headlamp and laid down and kept silent. I wanted to try to hear some type of animal to ease my worries. That's when I heard it. Something was dragging against the tent. I wasn't even 5 feet from the tent. It freaked me out, and I did something really stupid. I called out my friends' names. The noise stopped. I got no answer, but this feeling of dread was something I haven't felt before or since. That's when I felt it. Something poked the hammock. It wasn't like a soft poke. It was more like a jab. I was horrified. What the hell just touched me? And where the hell was it? I was frozen. I also suffer from anxiety, and I felt the panic rising in me. I couldn't understand what was going on. That's when I made another mistake. I decided that I wanted to see what had just jabbed me. All this happened within seconds. I reached up and clicked on my light. That's when I saw it. It was straight out of my nightmares. There was a creature about 4 feet above me, staring at me, kind of hunched over. I was about 3 feet off the ground, so this thing was probably 7 to 8 feet tall. It looked like a dog, but it also didn't. It had the face of a wolf, but human in a way. The eyes looked red. Ears looked like a clipped pit bull ears. Its mouth pulled back in a snarl. And a hand, claw, paw thing blocking its face. I was terrified. Its teeth were huge and sharp. The paws, if you could even call them that, hand five-finger type things with sharp, long claws that looked like they could tear me apart. I stared at this thing for what felt like hours, but it was probably only 5 seconds. That's when I screamed bloody murder. As soon as I did that, this thing let out something between a scream and a howl. It was deep, and I could feel it. That's when I heard Todd yell, "What the hell was that?" I heard the tent opening, and that's when the creature and I finally broke eye contact. I yelled at Haley and Todd to help me. I looked back up and this thing was climbing the freaking tree. It was still staring at me. That's when I saw the back of it. It had a tail of a dog, grayish silver fur, a black mane down its back, and a hump. I took this opportunity to scramble out of my hammock. We took off without grabbing anything. I had no shoes, nothing. We made it to the car. But the whole time back, I heard something in the trees. The next day, we had park rangers go get our things as we were freaked out. When they got there, everything was gone. Not even trash remained. It was as if we were never there. They blamed us for lying. We had no idea what happened. I had no idea what I saw or why it didn't just kill me. I haven't been back in the woods for a very long time. But still, every time I close my eyes, I see that thing and hear its roar. When I was younger, about 10 or 11, my best friend, we'll call him Jay, and I both loved making forts outside during our recess time at school. Both of us wanted to spend more time making forts and actually try making them livable. So I invited him over because there was a huge forest area about a 10-minute walk away from my house. My parents wouldn't be home, but we weren't left totally unsupervised. My brother, who was 16 at the time, was having a bunch of friends over to spend the night, so my parents said I could have Jay over to spend the night as well. It was around 5 p.m. The sun was still kinda out when I told my brother that Jay and I are gonna play outside. He wasn't really listening to me and just said, "That's fine, just do whatever you guys want, I don't care." We went out the back door and made our way to the woods. It was a fenced off area, but there were a couple holes that we could both sneak through. We started walking through the woods, trying to find a nice spot to set up our fort. We brought a backpack with us, filled with some food, water, duct tape, and we brought our pocket knives. When we finally found a good spot, we started collecting wood and built a nice fort that took a while. The sun was slowly fading away. Then, we started working on the interior. It was a fun time, until I walked out and realized it was very late. The moon was out, and that's all the light that we had. I told Jay, "It's probably best if we left," but he said, "It's probably only 8, and my brother wouldn't care." Keep in mind, we were both only 10 or 11 at the time, and neither of us had a cell phone. I said, "Okay," and we continued to build our fort, and then we took a break and started eating until I heard voices and twigs breaking around us. I told him, "Be quiet." I heard more footsteps and got worried. I was about to run like hell till I heard leaves crush right next to our fort. I covered my mouth to hide my breathing. Jay did the same. There was no obvious entrance into our small wooden fort, and it was sealed together with duct tape, so no one could get in unless they were our age and small enough. We heard some chattering till someone went, "Shh, Seconds felt like hours till I looked at Jay, and he pointed up with his other hand. I looked up and saw two faces looking down through the cracks of the wood. I yelled and we broke through the fort, and we both sprinted away in a random direction. We heard them right behind us, running after us. We kept running for what felt like hours, but it was only about 5 minutes, till Jay turned his head and said, "They're not behind us anymore." We both stopped to catch our breath. We didn't know where we were at all. Jay pointed in a random direction and said we should go this way. I didn't question him because I didn't have any better ideas. So we walked that way. We started talking about what just happened, till I saw a light coming from the left of us. It was kind of bobbing up and down, till I realized it was a flashlight. Jay and I both climbed a tree and rested on a branch, waiting for them to pass. It was 4 people walking below us. I couldn't make out what they were saying at all. We waited a little bit before climbing down and started walking towards where they just came from. Eventually, we finally saw a fence and jumped it. In the distance, we could see a small park that I recognized, and we made our way there until I found the same pathway to my house. We made it back to my house safely, and my brother and his friends didn't even know we were gone for so long. It was around 10:30 p.m. when we both made it home. No one else knows about this story except the 2 of us. We don't know who those people were and if they meant to harm us. If I had to guess, I'd say they were teenagers just exploring, kind of like what we were doing. Except, why would they be chasing us and looking for us? I have no idea. Okay, backstory time. Every 5th grade at my elementary school, we would go to an educational campsite called Outdoor ED. For 1 week, this campsite was a pretty way to learn about the outdoors and what goes on in the area. Anyway, it's about the 3rd night, and I'm ready to hit the sack. I had the top bunk, and my buddy had the bottom. There were about 10 kids and 2 chaperones in one cabin, all boys. We were called the Fur Cabin, a common name for a camp cabin. My bunk was right next to a colossal ass wide open window with a weak curtain. It's about 2 a.m., and I had to take a shit. The bathroom, in my opinion, is the scariest place in the area. It's always dark and quiet, which to me is bad. When walking to the bathroom, I remember getting shivers about every 3 seconds because of how cold it was since we were in the mountains. This was in October, so weather like that was very common. While washing my hands, a gentleman came in. He looked like he was in his late 50s. It appeared as if he had Graves' disease because his eyes were as wide as fucking light bulbs. He kind of looked like a farmer. He was wearing overalls, a hermit's hat, and he was wearing dirty hiking shoes. He had a fucked up leg, and he started to walk to the very last stall, and he closed the door. I noticed that his hands were also pretty bloody up to the wrist on both hands. I thought he was a camp counselor just working, so I didn't bother. I walked back to my cabin, and I laid down on the hard mattress, and I went into a deep sleep. I somehow woke up again, but my buddy Michael under me woke up a few minutes early and was panicking. I went to see what was wrong and saw what he was looking at. The same motherfucker from the bathroom was right outside of the window, staring directly into the cabin. He had something huge in his hand, which looked like a cow's head, but mutilated. I hurried to my counselor and told him that the man was outside. He ran outside to look, and he saw the man running to the woods that led to the La Honda Highway. One counselor ran after the guy, and the other kept us safe in place. The other counselor who was chasing him couldn't catch him. He had a crippled ass leg, mind you, and he still couldn't catch up. We all grabbed a heavy-duty blanket from a closet and covered the entire window, and I slept on a sleeping bag on the floor. The last day, and I didn't bother about the situation. We packed our bags and said goodbye to everyone. When entering the bus and driving up Half Moon Bay, we had to stop due to roadkill which was blocking the entire road that led south. We couldn't make out what it was, but when we drove past and got close, yep, you guessed it, a fucking headless cow. 10 years later, and I still get scared of that to this day.